It's Tuesday, June 24th, and welcome to the Daily Blueprint. I'm Hannah Moldavan, Deputy Communications Director for the Democrats, and your host today. First, and what you need to know today, we're monitoring the evolving situation in Iran and are here to break it down for you. First, Trump's administration is all over the place. The morning after Trump unilaterally bombed Iran without congressional approval, senior administration officials, including our favorite eyeliner influencer, J.D. Vance, swore up and down that regime change was off the table.
Our view has been very clear that we don't want a regime change.
I don't like the regime, but we're not into the regime change business here.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change.
It was not an attack on Iran. It was not an attack on the Iranian people. This wasn't a regime change move.
Only for Donald Trump to call for a regime change only hours later with a new catchphrase, "Make Iran Great Again," with Caroline Leavitt doubling down.
Is floating the idea of regime change. How does he believe that should be accomplished? Through the Iranians, the Israelis, or the Americans?
The president's posture and our military posture has not changed. The president was just simply raising a question that I think many people around the world are asking. If the Iranian regime...
Somehow, even after all of this, we have more bad news for you all. The worst person you know made a great point. Yesterday, Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, "The United States should not be involved in fighting nuclear-armed Israel's war with Iran." For once, we agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Even she doesn't believe that the U.S. should involve itself in another war. Meanwhile, in Congress, Speaker Mike Johnson came out against the War Powers Resolution, which would reassert Congress's power to authorize war and military action. And as Trump and his administration continue to make various claims about what's actually happening, let's not forget that 85% of Americans oppose the U.S. going to war with Iran. American lives are on the line here, and while we generally have low expectations for Trump, he owes the American people straightforward answers. Listen to what House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had to say on the matter during his press conference.
But the Trump administration intentionally decided to ignore the aggressive diplomacy that was available to it to try to address the Iranian nuclear threat and ignore the requirements of the Constitution, and now they've got to explain why. And we expect that justification, not just at the classified briefing behind closed doors tomorrow, but we expect them to explain to the American people the basis of the strike.
Members of Congress will have a classified briefing at 3 p.m. today, and the Gang of Eight, which includes leadership of both parties in both chambers, and the chairs and ranking members of both intelligence committees have yet to meet. We'll bring you the facts as they develop. And turning now to the latest on Trump's billionaire-first budget bill, Senate Republicans are preparing to vote on their billionaire tax scam. And they've somehow managed to make the bill even worse than when it passed the House. There are a lot of pieces moving and discussions to be had as this bill continues to move through the Senate, but the fact still remains. This bill would kick millions off their health insurance while raising costs on working families, all to fund tax breaks for billionaires. A new report even shows that this bill could push a whopping 5.4 million people into medical debt and increase the total medical debt that Americans owe by $50 billion, a 15% jump. We need everyone to make sure their family, friends, neighbors understand the awful realities of this bill. Republicans are feeling the heat, and now it's time for us to keep up the pressure. If your state has a Republican senator, give them a call and ask them to vote no. Text call to 43367 to get their phone number and a script. And today, for Democrats on offense, state attorneys general spoke on Capitol Hill yesterday in a forum highlighting Trump's lawlessness and disregard for our Constitution. Let's take a listen to Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul's remarks.
Under the Constitution and under federal law, the president has enormous power. But in our democracy, there are limits on that power. And we have challenged instances where the administration has clearly crossed the line. Whether or not I disagree with President Trump on his policy agenda, he must act in a lawful way that is consistent with the Constitution and the laws that Congress has enacted. Unfortunately, the president and his administration have chosen, with many of their actions, to ignore the Constitution and federal law. And when constitutional guarantees are ignored, all Americans are at risk.
The forum shined an important spotlight on how Democratic attorneys general are standing up for our democracy and fighting back against Trump administration's unlawful action through litigation. So far, Democratic attorneys general have filed more than 24 lawsuits to hold Trump and his administration accountable. And today marks the 3rd anniversary of the Dobbs decision, when Donald Trump's hand-picked Supreme Court justices overturned Roe v. Wade and put abortion access at risk across the country. Don't take my word for it. Trump took credit for it himself.
Especially since I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of something that all legal scholars, both sides, wanted and, in fact, demanded be ended. Roe v. Wade. They wanted it ended.
Since the overturning of Roe, 21 states have enacted abortion bans, with 13 of them being total abortion bans. And Trump's anti-choice allies continue to lobby and push to restrict abortion access nationwide. But a majority of Americans remain steadfast in their support of abortion rights and oppose further nationwide restrictions on abortion. Most Americans say they could not support an elected official who supports a ban on reproductive health care, including contraception or IVF. And a majority say they couldn't support someone who endorses an additional restriction on abortion ban. Following Dobbs, voters took to the polls to enshrine abortion rights in their states' constitutions. Last November alone, 7 states passed constitutional amendments to protect abortion. And Democrats continue to fight back. Today at 2:30 p.m., Senate Democrats Patty Murray, Tammy Baldwin, Elizabeth Warren, and Tina Smith are holding a shadow hearing to hear stories from abortion providers and others who have been impacted by the Dobbs decision. You can watch on Senator Patty Murray's YouTube page. And while Democrats continue to fight back, reproductive rights are still being attacked in the states. More than a year after Ohioans voted to enshrine abortion access in the state constitution, Republican lawmakers are saying, nice try. Republicans in the state legislature propose a total abortion and IVF ban, aiming to charge a woman who receives abortions with homicide. And Texas isn't doing much better. A judge recently struck down a federal health privacy rule put in place by the Biden administration. With the government able to gain access to their sensitive healthcare information, Texas women have reason to believe they could be prosecuted for receiving an abortion. So in light of this ongoing fight, I am honored to welcome Julia Callahan to the Daily Blueprint. Julia is a stay-at-home mother of 2 young children and is here to share her story about her access to reproductive care. Julia, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to give you a little bit more space to talk about your experience receiving reproductive care when just a year later, the care that you would have received would not have been an option for you.
Yeah, ultimately, I was denied miscarriage care at my local hospital over the course of 5 weeks until I deteriorated so much that my family and I were afraid for my life. In July of 2021, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant with our second. Unfortunately, I miscarried in my kitchen 3 days later. And I tried to miscarry at home, because you don't want to have to go to a hospital. It was too much. And when I got sick, I had to go to the emergency room for care. Each time, as I got progressively worse, the doctors continued to send me home. I was confused and hurt, and my son kind of was with me the whole process and watched it. He was 2 at the time. It got so bad that when my husband carried me into the emergency room the final time, we were a mess. We were crying, we were begging, pleading for somebody to do something and for me to receive the care that I needed, life-saving care. That's when the doctor finally gave me a RhoGAM shot. I want to clarify here that the care that I received is not illegal currently and was not at the time. But Georgia was litigating a 6-week abortion ban in the courts, and it was creating a culture of fear and confusion among providers. And since then, it's gotten even worse.
This story that you're sharing is absolutely devastating. And I think the point you clarified, that the 6-week abortion ban wasn't even in place yet. And still it was hard for you because of that culture to receive the care that you needed. You know, you're here in Washington. This is a place where people don't hear from individuals like you or the effects of the policies that they put in place. I want to thank you for coming here, but what is your message to Donald Trump Republicans that you're talking to on the Hill about access to reproductive health care?
Yeah. So I am here today to speak to legislators and put a face to the stories that so many people in where I'm from, Middle Georgia, we have one of the worst maternal mortality crises in the nation. Nobody wins in an abortion ban. Not the people who need abortions, not the people who go through miscarriages, and especially not families like mine who want to continue to grow their family and have more children, but I'm too scared to try in this climate. I've already been through it once while those protections were still technically in place. And the hospital was afraid of the political fallout. And that fear came straight from the kind of laws and rhetoric pushed by Donald Trump and the Republicans. So to Trump and every Republican, it's not pro-life. You're making it harder to live. You're making it harder for people like me who want to safely carry a pregnancy, to have a baby, to expand my family. But right now, being pregnant in this country is a risk that I cannot take. It's not freedom. It's definitely not family values. It's cruelty.
Your strength and your ability to speak to your experience is really inspiring. And you also told me off camera that you are getting involved even more so in your Democratic Party locally. Is that right?
Yeah, so this experience really propelled me into advocacy because I didn't realize how horrible it was to be a pregnant person where I live. And since then, I co-founded a reproductive justice organization, and I became the first vice chair of Macon-Bibb County Democratic Committee. And we are trying to make change on a local level and combat this maternal mortality crisis in the ways that we can to also facilitate people to care when they need to go out of state. So yeah, that's what I'm really passionate about now. And it's given me a new calling in life to help families like mine.
Leah, thank you so much for being here. I think it's during these times when it's really hard and when Democrats in Washington are holding Trump accountable and people like you across the country are standing up and fighting for our rights. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And moving to what you can do today. The DNC organizing team is hosting a training tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, where we'll share how you can get together with people you know to support access to reproductive health care, including how to effectively pressure Republicans to vote no against cuts to health care. Text TRAIN to 43367 to sign up and attend the training. And Senator John Thune has the power to bring the War Powers Resolution to the Senate floor, which would limit the president's ability to go to war with Iran without congressional approval. Join us in pressuring Thune. If you live in South Dakota, you can call his office. Text call to 43367 to get the phone number and script. If you don't live in South Dakota, continue to pressure GOP senators online to bring the resolution to the floor. I want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our guest, Julia, for watching this episode of the Daily Blueprint. We'll be here right with you every day at 10 a.m. Eastern on the DNC's YouTube page. Until tomorrow.